All right, guys, let's get right into it. And you can tell that I'm serious in this video because I've got my glasses on and my purple pimp shirt. What better way to talk about living the player lifestyle than having my purple pimp shirt? Guys, a couple housekeeping things. If you haven't watched the first video, this video here, I suggest you pause and go back and watch that one. Watching these out of sequence isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. A second thing, guys, is one of the viewers, one of the guys commented, and I appreciate the comment. He said it takes some skill to get through these in one take. And I do like to be one take Tommy, just for the interest of time. But as I said before, guys, that's why I have my computer in front of me and have notes in front of me. Because again, at 52, I can't remember all this shit. Hell, I can't remember yesterday. I'm getting old. So I appreciate that comment, guys, and all the comments from the guys have put in. But again, let's dig into this. And one of the other housekeeping items is, guys, let me be clear right away. I'm in no way telling guys or encouraging guys to live this so-called, player lifestyle, or better said, dating non-exclusively. I think that's the better way of saying this. But, player draws more eyeballs. And admittedly, I do subscribe to the algorithm, guys. But anyways, I am no way telling guys to do this. You make your own choices. You're all your own men. But again, with that said, let's get into this. One more disclaimer, guys. One more. Guys, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I don't think there's any good sense in rushing through something that there's a lot to unpack on. This is by all means not all-inclusive either. But stick with it to the end, guys, and I promise you, you're going to have a better understanding and the realities of this, so-called player lifestyle or dating non-exclusively if you stick with me all the way through. All right, guys, let's get into it. As I said in the last video, we talked about the player lifestyle. The freedom, the pros of the lifestyle, the cons, and of course there are cons and the downsides. But I left you guys with a simple yet very critical question. Are you actually built to live that life? Because the reality is, guys, most men who say they want it aren't built for that life, period. And I say that with absolute certainty. So in this video, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to talk about the realities, the modern dating market, what it actually takes to be the kind of man women choose. And guys, I also made another video on that. That's this one here, about being the man that gets chosen, not the man who chases. And then how to put yourself in environments where the opportunities to meet women actually exist. It's a very important part of this, guys. And then lastly, and probably the most critical, why the player lifestyle should never be the goal state. It's the byproduct of the man you become. I'm going to say that one more time, guys. This lifestyle is a byproduct of the man you become. All right, guys, let's keep rolling. All right, guys, as I talked about in something very critical, excuse me one second. Guys, I said this before, do not sleep on Panamanian coffee. Been here 4 months. Stuff is legit. All right, guys, the realities of the modern dating market. So let me start with a reality a lot of guys may not want to hear or may be ignorant of entirely. So, guys, if you are coming out of a long-term relationship, a marriage that you've maybe been in for a decade plus, some of you guys maybe 20 years, or you're just a single guy who hasn't, sort of put yourself out there, the dating market is not what you remember even in the early 2000s. I'm come from a time where I was dating in the late 80s, early 90s, where these apps and even platforms such as Plenty of Fish, you guys remember that one? Remember that one, guys? They're just very different. And the apps now have changed everything. Social media has changed the game. Women now, guys, have unlimited visibility and choice. It is a worldwide dating market. And what this does, guys, in fair or unfair, and again, we're not talking about what ifs and shoulds. I'm talking about the realities. Many women, not all, but many women have a inflated, what we refer to as an SMV, sort of sexual market value. So, as a quick example, guys, a woman who may be, what we would say a 4 or 5 on the sexual market, sort of 1 to 10 scale, not as a person, guys, let's understand that, but let's just call her the average woman. Call her a 5. Well, because of all the sort of validation and the likes and the comments she gets on social media from lesser, weaker men, we'd call them beta men, let's call them that, she now thinks she's a 6 or 7. Add to that, guys, that maybe she has been amorous with men that she considers 8s and 9s. Don't conflate it. These men have no intention, 0 intention of getting with her long term. But now that she's been with that guy, that is the basis of what she thinks she can get. Understand that, guys. That is a reality. Again, right, wrong, indifferent, it doesn't change the reality of it. And what this means is the modern dating market has become extremely competitive, or at the very least, very selective, as I just said. Most women are competing for the small percentage of men. Okay? Now, I talked about that sort of sexual market value scale, the 1 to 10 that I think everybody's heard of somewhere in their life. Maybe it wasn't labeled as such, but let's use that scale. Well, if you guys understand hypergamy at all, and this is not a concept that I want to get in depth on, if you want to dig deeper in depth on hypergamy, again, check out Rollo Tomasi. This guy literally has more videos, books written basically on the subject if you really want to understand it deeper. But in this sense, guys, hypergamy basically means women will only sort of date across 5 to a 5. And ideally, most women look to go up the scale. A woman who's a 5 wants a 6, 7, 8, 9, or even 10 if she can get that. That is a sort of, elevator pitch crash course in hypergamy, where we as men, we will sort of take whatever. If I'm a 5 as a guy, I'd love to get with a woman who's a 10, but I will certainly take a 5, and hell, I will get a 2 or 3 if I have to. Again, it's very different. Men and women's, view on that is very, very different. Men are not hypergamous. Guys, I'll say it one more time before moving on. Men are not hypergamous. We don't need to go up. We will go down the scale. Again, check out Rollo's material. It's probably the best all-encompassing if you really want to dig deeper on that. All right, guys, moving on. So women want to get with men who have their lives together, men with confidence, men with presence, men who stand out. So if you are the average guy, guys, drifting through life, this doesn't make you a bad guy. But if you want to live this sort of player lifestyle or date multiple women non-exclusively, it's not going to work. You are invisible. If you are average, you might want to pause the video, or if you're unwilling to sort of work yourself out of average. Again, it doesn't make you a bad person, guys. It just makes you invisible. I'm just telling you. That's the reality of the modern dating market. Guys, I'm going to speak here on what is basically sort of, universally sort of accepted as the 80-20, 5%. I think it's 4.5, but we'll use 5 for simple numbers sort of rule. Okay? So guys, to understand this, there's stats that have been compiled from the major dating platforms and apps. Say Bumble, Hinge, Tinder, maybe OkCupid, also Dr. David Buss, and also numerous studies that corroborate what I'm saying. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. This is based on empirical data. So, in a nutshell, again, elevator pitch, guys, I'm not going to give you the dissertation here. Basically, women see 80% of men as unattractive, undateable, uneffable. They just don't even see these guys. These are the guys that are invisible. So 4 out of 5 men, guys. Think about that. Now, if you're in that next 20%, does that mean that you're attractive? No. Understand this. This just means that you haven't been ruled out. You are considered. Maybe she swipes on you on a dating app. Maybe she entertains talking to you in a social situation. But it doesn't mean that you are, you are effable. I don't know where I'm at in my video. I'll try not to swear this early in the video. But then there's that sort of 4.5 or 5%. Those are the guys that get picked. So again, if you want to live this sort of player lifestyle, date non-exclusively, you need to be there. Again, guys, fair, unfair, I don't lives in should and ifs. I live in reality. If you want to be this guy, you got to be in this top 5% or less. Just telling you guys. All right, another thing you need to understand is, again, the dating apps should only be ever a supplement. Guys, I won't dig into their algorithms until I just kind of cursory hit on it with this 80-25% rule. But they're basically, unless you're in that top 2 or 3% of guys, maybe 4, being on dating apps is like pissing in your pants. You can do it. It's just not a very good idea. More primarily, guys, if you are on these apps, you have to absolutely maximize them. You need professional photos. You need a good bio. Guys, I'm telling you, you may not want to do this, but if you want to live this lifestyle, you absolutely need to do this. And your IG, your Instagram. Now, guys, my audience, 35 to say 50, a lot of guys may not have huge Instagram profiles. That's okay. But if you do, and I suggest you have one, they need to be curated as to maximize this lifestyle. Guys, if you've got, just scattershot photos, photos that don't sort of put you out in your best light, you're going to get passed by. I'm just giving you the facts, guys. Whether you met a girl on, Bumble or whatever, Tinder, met her in real life, she's going to ask for your socials. No different than an employer is going to check your, maybe LinkedIn if you're on there. A girl's going to check your Instagram. And if it doesn't meet what it doesn't give her that you're an interesting guy, you're just going to get passed by. Again, reality of the situation, guys. There's so much more I can dig into there, but that gives you sort of an idea of what you're up against. So what are these sort of top 5% of men? Who the hell are these guys? Well, these are the men that can usually, the guys who are in this 5% usually have one thing in common. They're in this top tier. They're in this top 5, 3%, period. Guys, just the facts of the situation. These guys are not perfect, but they're sort of the exceptions. Being in the 5% by itself denotes, that you are the exception. These guys are capable. They are proficient in multiple areas. Guys, I used the term before previously, they're sort of cosmopolitan. These guys are well-rounded, interesting guys. They have different interests, whether that be, sort of sport, outside of the gym. They can play an instrument. They're well-read. They write. They paint. They skydive. They live interesting lives. Women want to be around those type of guys. What this means, guys, and here we're going to speak on this here. Guys that take care of your bodies. Guys, if you want to be in this top 5%, you have to be fit. Your body has to, give off the idea, not even the idea, give off the fact that you are disciplined. You take care of your body. Yes, women like aesthetics. Men like aesthetics. Again, the broad shoulders, guys, the chest, of course, the six-pack abs. These things denote fitness, that you have a level of discipline. All right, guys, you have to have a level of style. You may rail against this. I'm not saying that you have to, sort of peacock, but you have to have style. The acid wash jeans, the New Balance 502s, the dad sneakers, the crappy golf shirts, the t-shirts that say affliction, and other such nonsense, guys, they got to go. You have to have sort of a signature style. And it doesn't have to be bombastic, but it has to be, a decent sense of style. Again, everybody has their own. Make yours your own, but have a sense of style. You have to have social awareness. We'll talk more about that in the next section. You have to develop charisma and you have to develop presence. Guys, you have to have these things. These are non-negotiables if you want to be in this top 5%. Argue with me if you will. Again, I'm not talking about this shit because I watched YouTube videos, read books, and watched podcasts on how to be a player. I lived this for the better portion of 2 fucking decades successfully. So again, tell me I'm wrong, but I'm just telling you the facts from a guy who has lived this. You need to be the guy that when you walk into a room, people notice. Again, I don't mean when you come in screaming and yelling and announcing your presence. The champ is here. No, not that guy. Your presence talks for you. And you have a direction in life. And that direction, most certainly, guys, is not chasing women. Again, somewhat counterintuitive. You get women by not chasing them. You get that by building the man. All right, guys. Women are drawn to men who are going somewhere, or, guys who are already there, especially at our age, that 35 to say 55. We talked about this in a couple of videos back, and it's a line from Rich Cooper. And again, you could have your opinions of Rich or whatever, but his line is great. Women don't care about your struggle. They don't care about the so-called race. They wait at the finish line and they bang the winners. Again, guys, argue against this if you will, but it bears out more in reality than it does not. All right, guys, we'll talk here on sort of becoming that guy. And this is where a lot of guys get it backwards. And I saw this with the younger guys. They think if I, do these certain things, I'll become that guy. If I learn game. Okay, guys, a lot has been made about the word game. Now, let me talk about this. And I went to ChatGPT to see if what it would spit out as opposed to what I had in my head as sort of the definition of game. But what ChatGPT gave me was game is the ability to make women feel attraction through your presence, conversation, and confidence. Not tricks, not manipulation, just high-level social competence combined with masculine energy. I think that is a pretty fair definition, even given to us by a sort of robot, AI. But guys, game in reality is nothing more than your social acuity, your social skills, your ability to influence people, both men and women, not being duplicitous, not being deceitful, but bring them into your sort of sphere, so to speak. Game is not good. It is not evil. It just is. Again, guys, when you talk about influence, great books, and I would suggest, guys, if you are getting into this lifestyle or you want to, the book, The Game by Neil Strauss, this book here, is a good read. Now, again, I'm not in alignment with these PUA, pickup artist dorks, and I think they are pretty much fucking dorks. But again, it's a good book to read to understand what game is as a concept. I also talked about influence. This book here by Robert Cialdini, in no matter what avenue of life, whether you're doing sort of sales, business, work, even here in dating, I think it's a great book to read and understand is how, again, how to influence people. And guys, influence people is not bad or evil. I think people get that conflated that, you're sort of trying to trick or fool people. No, that's not what influence is about. Even sort of babies and children understand game at sort of an instinctual level, how to influence people with their actions. Now, their game is very raw and sort of, unpolished. Ideally, as a man, to become a successful person who dates non-exclusively, you have polished game, okay? But you build that guy, you become that guy by sort of building your life, guys. Again, as we talked about your physique, your discipline, confidence, your career, your lifestyle. Game is just a form of communication, of those things by demonstration, not by explaining. Rollo Tomassi, and I'm going to use him again, always talks about demonstrate, never explicate. Great line. You don't tell women that you have social skills, that you are, you're building a life, or that you're an interesting guy. You show them that by demonstrating. They see your life. You don't demonstrate, or you don't explicate, guys. That is a great concept to understand. You're never going to talk a woman. You're not going to give her, the bullet point checklist of how to get her back to your place, back into your bed. It doesn't work like that, guys. An attraction starts long before you ever open your fucking mouth. I think, guys, let me back up. I know many guys will talk themselves out of, getting women. I've heard this line, and this is true too. I've heard this before from a number of sources that, in the first 5 minutes of meeting a woman, she doesn't necessarily knows if she's ever going to sleep with you, but she knows that she won't. Again, a lot of guys will talk themselves out of it. Just know that, guys. Speak less. All right. And it starts with how you carry yourself, your presence. All right, guys. Talking about here, putting yourself around the opportunity. Another thing that a lot of guys are apt to miss is opportunity just doesn't appear. As Michael Scott in The Office yelled, "I declare bankruptcy." The joke was he yelled it out loud. He declared it. By you declaring that you want to date him non-exclusively or live the player lifestyle doesn't mean that women are just going to show up, guys. That all of a sudden they're going to start swiping on you. They're going to start coming up to you. Doesn't work like that. Trust me. Just trust me on that, guys. You have to put yourself in the environments where these attractive women exist. What that means. Social environments, guys. So back up a little. I will say this again. Apps should only be a supplement. If you want to live this lifestyle and your only avenue to meet women is sitting there swiping on women on Tinder, stop now. Again, guys, stop now. Stop the video. It's not going to work. Unless you are literally Giga Chad. You are like 1% or less. It ain't going to work, guys. Social environments. Guys, that could be bars, upscale lounges, I say hotel bars, events around your town, maybe a concert, play, dance classes, classes at the, your local, whatever, Y, those type of things, language classes, traveling, guys, but to that end, you probably need to be in cities with more nightlife and more culture. And frankly, more people. So for example, if you are living, in BFE, Nebraska, and I used that before, and I don't know why I'm throwing so much shade on Nebraska. I really have nothing against, the state of Nebraska. But I think you're getting serious, guys. You need to be places where there's a larger populace if you want to live this lifestyle. So for example, my greatest success years, I lived for about 5.5 years in downtown Houston, Texas. Harris County, in which Houston resides, there's about 6 and some odd million people. Pretty simple, guys. You're fishing where the fish are, to sort of, turn a phrase. There's a lot of opportunity there, guys. As opposed to, living in a small town with 20,000 people, you're just going to have less odds. It's simple mathematics, guys. But I feel the need to tell guys that just, some guys just don't think about it. Logistics matter. And then, guys, you have to sort of live a lifestyle that puts you in place that naturally intersects with women. So if your routine is the same thing every damn day, work, home, gym, repeat, will you encounter some women? Sure, probably the same ones. Guys, you have to get outside of your comfort zone. And again, past the dating apps and out there, you have to, go out a couple nights a week. And I'm not saying, guys, you have to go raging at the club till 2 a.m. I'm just saying go have a couple drinks at different places within your city that you haven't been. Guys, when I traveled for work, one of the places I liked to go to when I was single was sort of upscale hotel bars or lounges, maybe, those type places. And I found that they were typically fertile for meeting people. Even if you weren't taking them home, maybe there was a person you could sort of interact with your business. Even if you just talked to a woman and there just wasn't, there was no end goal. You just were talking to somebody. That's simple, guys. Upscale restaurants, lounges, bars are a great place to start. Again, if you don't do this, guys, you're just simply shooting yourself in the foot. You're starting from a place of, sort of scarcity. Environment matters, guys. And as the saying goes, and as I said, you fish where the fish are. All right, guys, let's talk about lifestyle balance. And this is very, very important. So guys, pay special attention here. This is where a lot of guys crash, and as the young guys like to say, they get it twisted. If dating women, multiple women, and being a player is your primary and often sole focus, you're going to lose every fucking time. Okay, guys? Just know this. Because the women who are attracted to you, or who will be attracted to you, are attracted to you the fact because you are on a mission. You have a different, we call it higher purpose. It sounds religious, but you have a bigger purpose. And this is precisely why women are attracted to you. Not because you said you're going to be a player, that you dress like James Bond, or you put yourself out there. You're interested in more than just trying to bang her, even though that may be what you're trying to do. It's not your soul and it's not your primary purposes. You have something you're building, guys, or have built something, something more than just getting laid. Okay, we need to be that. And dating multiple women, dating non-exclusively only works, guys, only works if it's secondary to who you are as a man or becoming as a man. The moment, as I said earlier in the video, the moment this becomes the center of your life, getting with chicks, let me use that, you're going to lose your focus. You're going to lose who you are. Trust me, guys. I've got too far in the weeds on this myself. You're just out there chasing tail. You lose, the greater purpose in your life, building who you are. It just becomes, going out and trying to get a piece of ass. Trust me, guys. I have been there. All right, guys, here's a secret that a lot of guys are going to miss. And here's a truth that a lot of guys just don't understand. As I said, the player lifestyle is not about women. I've said this before as well. It seems counterintuitive. It's who you become as a man. A man who can attract women and have the women compete for him. Again, when you become this guy, you're going out and put yourself in situations where women are, but they're going to be coming to you. They're going to recognize your value. You're interesting, you have presence, you have confidence, you have some game and some charisma, and you can speak to these things. The women are going to come to you and compete for you. The discipline, the presence, the independence, the confidence, and the lifestyle. Again, guys, be interesting. Women respond to these things, but they are not the source of it, okay? Becoming this guy is the result of the work you've put in. It's the byproduct of your efforts, your sacrifices that you've made to become the guy worth knowing and being selected for. Guys, I almost want to say that again. This lifestyle, the player lifestyle, dating non-exclusively, is a byproduct. It is downstream on becoming this guy beforehand. So I say, guys, if you're coming out of a terrible marriage, a relationship, you're not in shape, your social skills, your game is let's call it rusty. You need to get that in order first, guys, before you try and do this, because you're just going to crash and burn, get frustrated, and then you get even more sort of, angry toward women. You got to get yourself in order first, guys. Understand that. All right, guys. After living this life for a long time, and I talked about it in the last video, it was nearly 2 decades. One thing became crystal clear to me. The men who can sustain this lifestyle long-term and choose to do so are the men who never made it their identity. This is not, I am not a PUA. I'm not, a pussy hound. They never, and I mean never, guys, refer to themselves as players. Guys who do that are dorks, and it's it gives the girls the ick, another phrase I hate, but they just simply embody the lifestyle. They never speak about it. They don't talk about, it's like Fight Club, guys. They don't talk about it. You just embody it. You just live it. Again, you'd never refer to yourself as a player. Again, I use that word sort of tongue in cheek. And the title of the video is to sort of draw eyeballs. Guys, you're just simply a guy who's exploring his options and dating non-exclusively. There's nothing wrong with that, guys. If you want to live this lifestyle, you have to get that through your head as well. These guys stay focused on their mission in life, their growth, their independence. And women will be a complement. Women come into their life, but they never become the center of it. Guys, again, women come in, they complement your life. They become part of it, but they will never be the center of it. All right, so understand that, guys. So as I sort of wrap this up, appreciate the guys you've stuck around this long. I truly appreciate you guys. Do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe. Guys, in the comments, as I said, drop them all. I've heard them all, the good, the bad, the ugly, and if you have something destructive or, constructive criticism, give me the why. Tell me why you disagree with me or something that could be done better. Helps us all. So guys, if you're asking yourself, should I live the player lifestyle? That's the wrong question. I said that before. The real question is, what kind of man are you becoming? Because if you don't become, quote unquote, high value, a phrase I don't love, disciplined, and an interesting guy, you're not going to have the opportunities. But if you do become high value, disciplined, and interesting, opportunities with women are always going to exist. Always. Guys, if you're that guy, women will find you. Again, trust me. But if you chase women without becoming that guy first, you'll spend your entire life, or at least your time trying to live this life, very, very frustrated. You'll be chasing your tail while sort of chasing tail. This is a situation, guys, where you truly cannot put the cart before the horse. There is an order to these things, guys, and that's why so many guys fail. They don't put in the work to becoming that guy, and then they try and put themselves out there, and they find themselves extremely frustrated. All right, guys, wrapping this up, getting to the end here. If you found this conversation interesting, the last two videos, let me know. He said, I've got more of this coming, but also, guys, exploring different topics here in men that are sort of 35 to say 55, that middle-aged male, a lot more than just dating and women. I'll talk about the realities of sort of masculinity, or as it is right now, discipline, and, sort of living a sovereign life. Not bullshit fantasies, guys, not, this sort of self-development porn, if you will, but the truth, or as close to it as I, can get in the sort of unflattering realities of life, whether that be dating, relationships, careers, jobs. There's a lot of realities that we don't, we want to sort of push aside or give a softer version. I'm going to give it to you like it is, guys. If you've read my book, and if you haven't, you probably should. You guys who know me, I just cut through the bullshit. I'm not here to sugarcoat things. So, guys, probably been too long here again. Appreciate you all sticking it out to the end. And remember, as always, live deliberately.